We are doing a deep dive into the hidden factors that actually separate the wildly successful from everyone else. And honestly, the truth is so much more structured, way more internal, and absolutely accessible once you get how it works. Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly is the mental difference that creates completely different outcomes for people? I mean, we're talking about folks living in the exact same world, looking at the exact same opportunities, and a lot of times having the exact same baseline capabilities. So, why does one person just surge ahead while another gets totally stuck? It is the ultimate question of human achievement. Today, we're unpacking that hidden psychology. It's basically the invisible engine driving those completely divergent paths.
But to really get to the truth, we've got to bust some deeply ingrained myths first. Society loves to tell us that wealth and success are just about having more money on day one, right? Or having some off the charts raw intelligence, or just grinding out more hours of hard work. But the reality? The reality is entirely different. The real difference isn't about raw capability at all. It's firmly rooted in human psychology. It's about our decisions and how we fundamentally view the world around us.
And that brings us to our first core concept, the ultimate mental divide. Because look, the gap between staggering success and just average results, it is not a talent gap. No, it's a decision-making gap. People get so obsessed with acquiring more and more skills, but the real divider is the internal framework that dictates how you choose to deploy the skills you already have. Think of your choices as the steering wheel of your life. And that wheel, it's controlled entirely by your psychological framework. So, what is a decision-making framework? It's simply the psychological process of making choices that dictate your outcomes. Basically, prioritizing calculated action over just pure capability. Because decision-making doesn't just happen in a vacuum, It always stems directly from human psychology. Like we said, it's that invisible engine of success. If you can understand, and more importantly, upgrade, the psychological process behind how you make choices, you literally change the entire trajectory of your outcomes. It's a total game changer. Now, think about the raw materials we use to make decisions every single day. For the highly successful, it really boils down to two main things: time and information. How you value and how you process these two specific inputs is going to dictate almost every single result you get in your personal and professional life. Let's look at time first. Most people view ordinary time just as passing hours and days, right? It's just a resource to spend. But the highly successful, they operate on what we call wealth time. They see time as a strictly limited, totally irreversible asset. And because of that, they absolutely refuse to spend their energy on every little thing that crosses their desk. They are ruthless about reserving their time almost exclusively for those big, future-altering decisions. And this brilliantly illustrates a philosophy famously championed by Warren Buffett. I mean, the guy fiercely protects his schedule. He keeps unnecessary meetings to an absolute bare minimum. Why? Well, so he has the totally unencumbered time and the mental space required to think deeply about the few massive decisions that actually move the needle. Okay, so time leads right into how we process our second raw material, information. Most people fall into this massive trap of waiting for perfect information. It's like, endlessly reading reviews for 3 weeks before buying a toaster. But in the real world, and especially in business, complete 100% certainty, it's a myth. It doesn't exist. Wealth is actually built by acting on sufficient information. Now, actually scratch that. It's not carelessness. It's looking at every possible angle, gathering just enough data to calculate the risk, and then having the psychological fortitude to pull the trigger and make the decision on time. Now, taking decisive action is incredibly powerful, for sure, but you have to sustain it. You might make one fantastic choice today, but what about tomorrow and the day after that? This is exactly where psychology separates the dreamers from the actual achievers. Let's look at the daily habits that build on those high-level decisions. We love to romanticize these sporadic bursts of genius, don't we? But psychological research paints a very, very different picture. It turns out self-control and consistent action are way more powerful for long-term success than just raw intelligence. A high IQ? Sure, it might give you a great idea. But the discipline to execute small, focused actions, day in and day out, that is what actually builds empires. It's really all about the power of compounding action. Think about it. Every single day, you face these tiny self-control decisions. Do I work on my project, or do I fall down a 2-hour rabbit hole of internet memes? Over a single day or even a week, the difference seems totally negligible. But stacked over months and years, wow.
The discipline to consistently choose the slightly harder, future-focused action creates a massive, basically insurmountable gap in results.
All right, so let's see how this internal psychology builds into our interactions with the world around us. Because success definitely does not happen in a vacuum. Up to this point, we've talked mostly about internal stuff, right? How you view time, information, your own habits. Let's shift gears a bit and focus on how this exact same psychological framework applies to other people and human relationships.
When researchers look at major markets like the US and Canada, a really clear pattern emerges. Raw skill alone simply isn't enough to reach the absolute top. There is just immense power and social leverage. Trust, networking, and the opportunities born from genuine relationships, they often completely override things like traditional job boards. Literally, one correct connection, built on mutual trust, can instantly change the entire direction of a career.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely dismantles the myth of the perfect person. Successful leaders, they don't waste their time hunting for someone who is flawless at absolutely everything. Instead, they look for the best fit. They get that every single human being is going to be remarkably strong in one skill and probably pretty weak in another. Massive success comes from combining those strengths, not from demanding impossible individual excellence. And this is the exact precise method highly successful people use. They don't try to hide their weaknesses out of ego or fear. No, they openly acknowledge them, they design systems around those blind spots, and they intentionally bring in the perfect fit to cover them. It's this kind of psychological maturity that takes a single, strong individual and turns them into an unstoppable, incredibly powerful team. Okay, we are now going to escalate to one of the most critical psychological dividers of all, the psychology of risk. Honestly, how you view danger, uncertainty, and the potential for loss, it is the ultimate litmus test for your future success. See, the wealthy and wildly successful, they don't just blindly accept risk, but they certainly don't run away from it either. While most of us process risk as this highly anxiety-inducing emotion, something that completely paralyzes us, highly successful people actively strip that emotion away. They view risk purely as a cold mathematical calculation. To ground this abstract idea, let's look at a philosophy inspired by Jeff Bezos. He's emphasized over and over that big decisions frequently have to be made in the face of really deep uncertainty. Why? Because delay itself is a cost. Waiting too long for perfect safety is often the biggest, most damaging risk you can take. If you wait until everything feels perfectly safe, well, you've probably already missed the opportunity entirely. And everything we've covered today, how we value time, acting on sufficient information, leveraging our networks, and calculating risk, it all leads us right here. We're about to look at the ultimate paradigm shift. This is really the climax of our explainer today, and it's the absolute core truth about the psychology of wealth. So the crucial point is this. The final truth isn't actually about money or intelligence at all. It is entirely about perception. Some people perceive the world as a harsh, difficult place where their only goal is to just survive. But the highly successful, they look at the exact same world and see an open, abundant system that is practically designed for them to scale. That single psychological lens is what determines who moves forward and who stays exactly where they are. It's just a profound realization, isn't it? The entire trajectory of your life is shaped by this invisible framework in your mind. So ask yourself, are you operating on sufficient data, or are you still waiting around for perfect certainty? Are you hiding your weaknesses, or are you actively building a team around them? And ultimately, which lens are you using to view your world today? Are you just surviving, or are you ready to scale? Think deeply about that. I really hope this explainer has given you some solid tools to upgrade your own framework. Keep learning, keep pushing, and I'll see you next time.